Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, aka Big Head. Hey, welcome back to Big Head on the Block. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank my listeners for not only supporting me, but giving me constructive criticism and ideas to talk about. Today, we're going to focus on part 2 of the hunt, interrogation, and incarceration of a serial killer. Once again, I have retired detective John Norwood in studio with me. Welcome back, John.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me back once again, sir.
Good deal. To recap part 1 for our listeners, detectives from multiple agencies were investigating several different crime scenes involving murdered women in the Baton Rouge and surrounding area. Many of the crime scenes initially had similar MOs, which is modus operandi, which means that the crimes have similar traits. But detectives were discovering that the crime scenes were beginning to indicate that MOs were either evolving with a particular offender, or they may actually be multiple offenders operating simultaneously in the area. So, John, when we left off, you described the brutal murder and the crime scene of Charlotte Murray Pace. That ended the last episode, the part 1. So let's jump right into the homicide detectives' continued hunt for the serial killer or serial killers. So kind of give us a lead in after y'all realized there were could potentially be two people operating, and you're seeing high risk people and low risk people being murdered. What was y'all primary focus at that point?
Yeah, well, Tim, like you said, we were investigating the murder of Charlotte Murray Pace, and certainly one of the things we mentioned last time we were here was that this young lady was certainly what we considered to be a low risk victim. LSU student, MBA. She's graduating soon, and in a very nice and affluent neighborhood, and she's suddenly attacked inside of her home. And of course, if you remember, we talked about the horrific scene that had taken place in this murder inside of that home that day.
Yep.
And there was evidence that was left behind that where we eventually collected and was processed and tested.
From that particular case or from all the cases?
I'm talking this particular case, but in addition to that, to all the other cases. And so in doing so, in this particular case, we developed what we discovered to be a male profile, unknown male profile. And so there, of course, detectives began to, let's say, compare that profile to other profiles from previous cases.
Okay, so unsolved cases that have been trending for several years, I guess, would be the easiest way to describe it. Y'all are seeing, what was the term you used to describe the males? The profile.
Profile, yeah.
Multiple profiles from different people, and none of them are matching up at this point.
Yeah, well, let me say this, that there are a time when we did begin to match profiles to particular cases. However, but it did not match up with all the cases that were open, unsolved cases of murdered women.
So as y'all were progressing through this DNA evidence and all the other evidence, you still are seeing high risk and low risk murders with different profiles.
That's correct.
Right?
That's right.
Are you still consistently seeing the high risk people, the high risk profile that y'all got? Mm-hmm. That guy was leaving the breast exposed with the bra still intact. Are y'all still seeing this type of crime happening?
Those were still happening. Yes, they were. And just incidentally, simultaneously, we would go to another scene, as this one I'm describing, the last one he's talked about, this Murray Pace scene, and this was a totally different scene with a totally different MO.
So did y'all collaborate? Y'all had a task force formed at this point, right?
We did, yeah.
Y'all were still collaborating, still either daily or weekly meetings. Were y'all responding to crime scenes together still at this point?
Absolutely we were. Yes,
okay.
sir.
So the exchange of information was consistent. It was a consistent flow of information because y'all are trying to determine basically what the hell's going on in Baton Rouge, because a ton of people are getting killed, and y'all are not confused, because it's not a good word, but y'all are kind of baffled as to how y'all having so many different crime scenes, so many different details from the crime scenes. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate, Tim. And so when we say people, we're talking women targeted.
Okay.
Okay. So, and I want to be clear. It wasn't men or children necessarily, but it was women who were being targeted. Again, what did that sort of kind of, raise our eyebrows were we had, again, women who were killed in fashions as we described, strangulation mechanisms that were used on these high-risk victims on the street, bodies left in dump locations, outside scenes. And now we are getting these women who are low risk of being attacked in their houses. And we say, well, does a serial killer change his stripes? Does a tiger change his stripes?
Right.
And it don't necessarily happen that way. So now we are highly suspecting, as we collaborate and talking and working together, that guys, something's afoot here. The guy who killed this woman in this park may not be the guy who killed this woman inside of her house.
Okay, let me go back in time, just in my mind, as a young street cop in Baton Rouge. It seemed to be, at some point in time, you said that, they said there may be a serial killer that was introduced to the media and to the public by the administrations. I remember there was a lot of panic. There was a lot of information, false information being strewn around at the time. Was this the same time that they were looking for this white truck with a white male?
Yeah. If you remember, man, you do remember correctly that we had profilers, professional profilers, who looked at some of these crime scenes, and out of their reviewing the crime scenes, analyzing the crime scenes, they were able to come up with the type of person that they believed that would have been responsible for these murders.
And at that particular time, I remember the profile being, the white male, a certain age range, like 25 to 35.
Right.
That may not be exact, but it was almost common for white males in that age bracket to be serial killers nationally. And so this was almost kind of a generic profile, if you will, based on historical data maybe. Did the profilers tell y'all with any certainty that maybe the low-risk victims and the high-risk victims may have two different people doing them? Did they ever make that assertion?
I don't remember that being said. And let me say, I won't say that it was not said. It's just that I don't remember it being said.
Okay.
I specifically remember, as you did, the profile that was surfaced was the white male in the white truck, certain age, certain bill. And I remember that every white dude who was out there fitting the MO or fitting the profile that we're looking for in a vehicle got stopped.
Right.
And so, but as it would turn out, nothing further from the truth was the fact of these guys, the person who we ultimately arrested for the murders, especially those ones that were low profile murders, was nothing further from the truth.
Low risk murders you're referring to?
That's
the
right.
low risk.
The
Okay,
low risk, that's right.
So I think it was 2002, and if memory serves me correctly, and it might not be, but we had the low risk murders occurring. At some point in time, y'all determined as homicide detectives that it was a black male not driving a white truck, and his name was Derek Todd Lee. Y'all actually made an arrest in some of these cases, right? The low risk cases with
Absolutely.
Derek Todd Lee?
Absolutely. Well, there was a process. Now, I wasn't intricately involved in the Derek Todd Lee cases as I was in the Sean Vincent Gillis cases.
Okay.
However, I was on the peripheral, okay? So what I do know is about that particular case that really kind of put us on Derek Todd Lee was first and foremost the DNA profile that was extracted from the crime scene. Now, the other thing that was also prevalent there, what may have not been public knowledge, is that Murray Pace's phone was missing.
Okay.
And that phone was a key and intricate piece of evidence that was used to solidify the case against Derek Todd Lee. And so when we discovered the phone was missing, we immediately got a warrant to go up on the phone. And you guys know what that simply means. To go up on it means to ping it and determine what the location of this phone was.
So was the phone still active at this time?
Still active, yes, sir.
Okay, so for those who don't know that are listening, the police have the ability to get with a telephone company and or a provider, either through exigent circumstances or through just a normal course of action as far as search warrant. And they'll give you real-time data. Typically every 15 minutes or so, they'll give you an updated location. So y'all were up on the phone. What did this reveal to y'all, if you can recall?
Yeah, I can. Again, and I wasn't there, but I'm aware of the process that was applied to gather this evidence. So we went up on the phone. The phone pinged at a certain location, and they did what they call a triangulation to locate the phone.
Right.
And once the phone was located, it was located. I don't recall the exact location, but I know it was discarded in a field. And of course, the triangulation process came right to the location of the phone. The phone was retrieved, and the phone was taken and processed for evidence as well. And lo and behold, the DNA from that phone and the DNA from the crime scene was a match.
Okay.
So now you're solidifying. Now you're closing the door on a particular suspect.
But it was matched to still an unknown profile, right?
The unknown profile.
Okay. Without getting too in depth into it, if you remember, or just your best recollection, there was a lot of evidence that pointed toward Derek Todd Lee.
That's right.
Y'all, as homicide detectives, not you specifically, but homicide divisions in Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge, and Louisiana State Police.
Yes.
Y'all, in a collaborative effort, made the arrest.
Yes.
Ultimately, forensically linked Derek Todd Lee to several murders.
That's right.
And at that point in time, y'all as detectives had what kind of feeling?
Well, initially there was a sigh of relief. Like, ooh, man, we have got this guy who was responsible for several of the murders in Baton Rouge off of the street.
And creating panic everywhere because it was mass hysteria.
Yeah.
For those who weren't around in that particular time, in Baton Rouge, man, it was chaotic. Everybody was scared. You have people being murdered. So y'all collectively had a sigh of relief. Y'all have a serial killer, and Y'all pretty much knew it was him. I mean, he still had to go to trial and everything. But
absolutely. But Tim, to expound upon what you said about the mass hysteria, if you remember that several gun stores were either sold out of their handguns or they had a hard time keeping handguns on the shelf because everyone and their grandmother was going out buying handguns or some type of weapon to protect themselves in their homes. Remember, a lot of these attacks were taking places inside of the home, and specifically the ones that were tied to Derek Todd Lee.
Right.
Before he was named as the quote unquote serial killer.
Yeah.
So everyone was in high alert. I mean, if you remember, there was classes being taught, self-defense classes all over the city.
Right.
There were people on high alert in the parks when they were out jogging, exercising. No one did anything alone because we don't know who before he was discovered. No one knew who this guy was, or when he would strike again. So it could be at any time.
Right. And for those of us who were in uniform patrol at the time, we had a heightened awareness also because we knew that it only takes one little small moment in time for you to catch a break. So you have to be hyper vigilant. You have to pay attention when you're patrolling these areas where the murders happen. They were centrally located for the most part, especially the low risk victims. So as uniform patrol officers on the streets, we're the first eyes and ears. We're the guys who are out here and sees movement on the street. A good street cop understands normal movement and stuff that we would consider shady or something like that. So we see somebody that's maybe lurking in the area that they don't belong. Of course, hey, we're gonna stop you and talk to you. Hey, what you doing over here? So there was a heightened awareness also from the men and women who were patrolling the streets of Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish. So it was a very testy time, man. Yeah. And, everybody wanted this guy caught. Yeah. So y'all breathed a sigh of relief. Yeah, but he was caught. Go ahead.
Let me say this on that same note. So it went a few layers deeper. And what I mean by that, everyone who could go out and buy a weapon did go out and buy a weapon to protect themselves.
Right.
Everyone who could afford to put alarm systems, upgrades on their houses did so. Now, let's go down to, I guess, another segment of the population, so if you will. We would talk to as detectives, we would talk to some of the ladies of the night. And of course, that's what we refer to as the women who are out late at night, and let's be real, they're prostitutes.
Right.
Okay. So even there, they took time to modify their behavior. They would tell, we would go out and talk to them just to say, hey, look, you guys need to be, here's my card. If you see anything suspicious, call us. And we were told that, hey, look, we are not going any places alone. We're watching out for each other. Even one of them told me that that I keep a watch on my friend. So they would go in pairs, and they say we would never go anywhere alone with each other. And even if they would get in the car with someone would somehow trail that car somehow, or try to determine where their friend was, their John was with that particular lady of the evening.
Yeah.
And so everyone, including those ladies, modified their behaviors, and so now, it's not just the people in normal society or on high alert. Everyone every aspect of life is on high alert.
I think that's pretty intriguing. And cops, people don't understand. Cops do a lot of things that most people don't know, but I venture to guess that y'all probably went and spoke with these ladies and said, hey, people like you are getting killed. That's y'all right. Need to make sure, cops warn people. Cops tell drug dealers, hey, man, I can't stop you from dealing drugs, but there's a small portion of these drugs that are going out and they're killing people. So if you're the ones making these fentanyl pills,
yes,
we need you to stop whatever brand you're making. You know, cops, unfortunately, it sounds kind of odd, but cops have these discussions because we street people, and it's important that people in the community understand that these girls, although they were prostitutes, they were looking out for each other, and as police officers, y'all are informing them and saying, hey, we need y'all to look out for each other also. So, you know, that's something that police do that most people would never even
think about.
It wouldn't even think about. So,
and let's be clear, Tim, because I don't want to send out any misconceptions. By no means did you or nor I or any of our coworkers condone the behavior of the prostitutes or the drug dealers. Nevertheless, you know, we knew that unless we had a case that we could make against them, we couldn't arrest them, even though we suspected them of doing what they were doing. And so, and in process, you know, we would warn them because we don't want them to become the next victim.
Right. And you made an important point because police officers, sometimes we have to put out information for the betterment of society, all right? And
that's right.
People dying with fentanyl, the drug dealers need to know. We don't condone what you're doing. The prostitutes need to know. We're not saying be a prostitute. We're saying we know it's going to happen. Drugs, prostitution, those are vice crimes that are they've always been around. They'll always be around. But if we can make people safer, then it's our obligation to do it.
That's right.
So back on the sigh of relief. Y'all breathe the sigh of relief. Derek Tylee's incarcerated.
He's in custody.
And he's in custody, awaiting trial. But y'all still having bodies surface, right?
That's right. That's right. And so so now we are still having women turn up dead, murdered.
The high risk
the
component.
high risk victims in different parts of the city. So what we did was, after the Derek Todd Lee escapade, you know, when he was caught, the sigh of relief was breathed, and the big task force that we had in place did pare down.
Okay,
but it never, to the credit of the chief and the sheriff, they never said disband this unit. In fact, just the opposite. They said, you guys who are committed to these task force, you continue to work, because that's still work to be done. And so
that was a good good decision by the higher ups. I commend them also for that.
Yeah.
So y'all are figuring out that these bodies keep surfacing, the high risk component, and do they have the same type? I guess the cause of death is it the same with all the ones that are being discovered?
What we are now finding is that these cases we're finding subsequent to Derek Todd Lee being incarcerated, we're finding that women are being found either completely nude or nearly nude, some with the bra still on, some with the bra pushed up. Their bodies are usually in outdoor scenes. There is, it is indicative of what we determined to be the mechanism of maybe a strangulation device being used to strangle these women. And
are you seeing stuff around the neck area or something that would lead y'all?
That's exactly right.
Did y'all have a general idea what you thought it might be?
Oh yeah, well we had exact idea, because on one of the scenes we discovered the zip tie on the victim, and what was the other thing that was significant was these bodies were being mutilated, and so we had to go back, Tim, and look at the bodies of the women who were mutilated in some sort of way. When I mean by mutilation, I mean there's either cuts on the body, either partially cut limbs or limbs cut off completely.
So y'all have intensified the hunt.
That's right.
Because you know that there's another serial killer, right?
That's right.
And you believe that he is using, or the perpetrator is using industrial strength zip ties,
That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, so these women are being killed with the zip ties.
Mm-hmm.
Their bodies are being mutilated. Y'all have DNA profiles from an unknown an unknown contributor.
That's right.
Are y'all linking them now, or the different scenes being linked with this unknown profile?
Well, the different scenes are being compared to this now unknown profile, and I guess the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, is going to be the case that the last case, Donna Bennett Johnson.
Okay.
Remember, that's the case that occurred, I want to say, off of Ben Hur, if memory serves me.
I believe so. It was the body was dumped in an empty field.
That's right. That was the case that sort of kind of solidified and sort of kind of brought things together to let us know that now, guys, we are linking forensically these cases together.
All right, so let's tell everybody. I have a little bit of knowledge of that case, but to my recollection, and I wasn't involved in the actual hunt for him. Y'all were as homicide detectives, but
Okay.
My recollection is that the body was dumped in a field and somehow dismembered.
That's right. So in this particular case, this victim was picked up someplace and brought to that location. Now, once she was there, at some point, the suspect, i.e. Sean Vincent Gillis, strangled her with this weapon he called the zip tie, and he actually cut off her hand. I don't remember which was the left or the right, but he cut the hand off, and then later on we know this to be true because the subsequent investigation, he actually posted her in the trunk and took photographs of this victim while she was dead, with the zip tie on her neck and missing the limb that he had just chopped off her.
Did they find the limb on scene?
I do not believe they did. Remember now, they found a hair, a foreign hair to her in the stump.
Okay.
She had very short hair.
Okay, gotcha.
This was a long strand of hair, and ultimately determined that Sean Vincent Gillis had very long hair on his arms and all throughout his body.
Okay, sir. Her body was discarded. They found a hair that apparently was not hers. So they took that hair and did what with it?
Yeah, it was not just a hair. It was a hair with a follicle still attached, and that is rich for DNA evidence.
Okay.
So yes, and the guys who did the crime scene investigation did a awesome job. Kudos to those guys, because honestly, if one who's given the duty of crime scene investigation is not just there just to allow the detectives to direct them, to tell them to pick up stuff, they are there as crime scene investigators.
Right.
So they're there to look at every item on scene and make a determination whether the items that they see are worthy of collecting, processing in the lab for possible DNA. And so certainly these guys were on the job. So when they examined the victim's body on scene, they certainly took the time and looked carefully and discovered, wait a minute, in this stump where the hand is missing, there is a hair And you know how small a hair can be.
Yeah, that's amazing that they found it. Kudos to them for being professional and for being so diligent in doing their job, man. Because that's an extreme. That's a huge break in a case.
Absolutely. So they took the time to carefully collect that item, and it was sent, packaged properly, and sent off to the lab quickly and processed.
What other evidence did they find at the scene that was of evidentiary value to this particular case? That kind of
there was several items that were picked up, but one of the most important of items that was collected at the scene was tire tracks. And the tire tracks ultimately was a huge discovery that brought this case to the point where we really narrowed down the suspects.
So for those listeners, CSI, y'all have seen this on TV hundreds and thousands of times. They took a mold of the tire tracks that were left in close proximity to the body, and tell us now what they did with that mold.
They collected the mold of the tire tracks, and they went to dealerships, and they determined what type of tire this was.
So they took the mold, went to the dealership, determined what type of tire it was, and then at that point they collaborated. I'm guessing to try and come up with a plan. And what was the plan? And
so what the plan was, once they determined what type of tire it was, then detectives, a collaboration of multi-agency task force, including the sheriff detectives, BRPD detectives, LSP detectives, they went out and they found out every dealer in the city of Baton Rouge who sold that particular tire. I'm talking every little car shop in town. Now, can you imagine?
Yeah, that's a huge task, and
a huge task.
People think that officers have a lot of time, but man, even with a large team, that's a monumental task. So they put this plan into action. I'm guessing, it took a lot of manpower hours and a lot of going back and forth to these dealerships to try and figure this one out. So
but we came together and we gave out assignments to officers and detectives to go to those particular tire shops and now request information on who all the customers were who bought those type tires within the last couple of years.
So they go to the dealerships, they're compiling a list of names, and at that point in time, I'm guessing y'all disseminated a certain amount of names to each
That's
officer.
That's right. We compiled a list of individuals who purchased those tires. And so now you take that list from every shop, and now you got to dispense those lists to individual officers and detectives to now go out and knock on doors.
Because now you have hundreds of names of people who bought these tires.
Right. And the ultimate goal was to reach out to the individuals who have purchased these tires. And once we have determined that by contact that this person may have purchased this tire within the last few years or whatever case may have been, then the second thing was, we asked that individual to cooperate in our investigation and allow us to swab their mouths and collect DNA from them.
Did y'all meet any resistance? Because most people, I would think, would be a little hesitant to give DNA.
Surprisingly, most people were not hesitant. There was a great number who did resist giving their DNA, but it wasn't most, surprisingly.
Okay, well, that's good.
Because people were like, hey, I bought those type of tires, but if this can help you then I'll consent. I'll sign a consent form and give you a DNA swab.
And I'm guessing the people that didn't want to give the DNA, unless y'all had probable cause to, or I guess probable cause would be the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Probable cause to move further. Y'all just didn't have them in the database.
Well, yeah. Well, and I'm going to tell you, some people, they're conspiracy theorists, and that's just being real. And so they say, we don't know what. I don't. If I give you my DNA, I don't know what you're going to do with it. And not that they were anyone that operating outside the law per se, but they were just skeptical of giving out their DNA because they didn't have any idea where their DNA may end up.
Right. And so, look, I'm gonna stop you there, man, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist for the most part, but I understand one thing. They wanted to do a comparison DNA when my unit got broken into. My personal vehicle got broken into, and my DNA was not on file anywhere. The crime lab wouldn't process the information that we had from the burglaries without my DNA. And I was like, I really ain't comfortable giving my DNA now. I trust police and I trust the DNA crime lab, but it was just like almost kind of an invasion of my privacy and my personal sanctity, man. But eventually I gave it. Reluctantly, I gave it. I wasn't happy about it, but I did. And it actually proved beneficial because the DNA was compared and it wasn't mine, but we did get a contributor and we were able to identify them. They took mine to exclude me as the profile.
Exactly.
And, so I can understand, for people listening, cops, they're not going to put your DNA on some murder scene somewhere.
That's right.
And like I said, I had been a cop for a long time, so I understood all the elements of this. I just wasn't real comfortable doing it. Although I did it. So we'll get back on topic now.
And at the end of the day, and I'll just say this, that it was used to either implicate or exonerate.
Right.
All right. So at the end of the day.
So y'all are now under the daunting task of contacting everybody who ever bought these tires over the last couple of years.
That's right.
Some people may still have the car. Some people may not.
Yes.
Then you'll maybe have to try and figure out who bought the car and try to narrow it down. But at some point in time, y'all as detectives went to an address on Virgin Avenue, and that's, for those who don't remember, it's around the Highland and Lee area.
That's right.
And talked to a white male who lived there.
They say, we're here because you purchased tires from a particular shop based on the information we've gathered.
Right.
And do you still have this car? And of course, he had to admit he did. And so at some point during the conversation, we were made aware from the detectives who actually were on the scene that Sean started making some very interesting questions asking interesting questions.
So Sean admitted to having purchased the tires because they typically, cops ask questions that they know the answer to, and they knew the answer to this.
He had purchased the tire.
Right. So,
well, somebody, he had purchased the tire because it was on his, he was on the list.
Right.
Go ahead.
So he's kind of inquisitive, so he's kind of questioning them a little bit as to some of the things that
and without, and again, I don't know the exact wording, but just paraphrasing, at some point it was, I believe he said something to the effect of detectives, are you guys inquiring about that one who was killed, who was found? I don't know if he gave the street, but recently,
right?
Y'all, this woman that was found killed, and
I've seen some of the interviews, so I kind of know what happened there. And just for our listeners, just to kind of put you in the mindset, he's kind of sort of feeling out the detectives, trying to get a little insight from them.
That's right.
He admitted to knowing this lady. She had done some housekeeping for him or something.
Right.
So eventually that day from Virgin Avenue, I believe, and make sure your memory serves you correct, I believe that they asked him to come in and talk, basically saying we think you might have some information that might be helpful to us. They didn't necessarily know that he was a serial killer, or they might have thought he was a serial killer, but obviously they didn't relay that to him. So he eventually went in that day on his own, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And certainly no one knew at the time that he was the serial killer, because once we knew, then we certain actions will follow the actual probable cause to make an arrest. So, but no one knew. So he did what you just said. Yes, sir.
So they brought him in. They talked to him. They released him.
That's
and from the witness information that I've gotten from other testimony, I think they put him under constant surveillance when he left.
They did.
There, and then at some point in time, what broke the case? Was it DNA?
It was DNA. It was certainly the DNA. And as I said, I believe the straw that broke the camel's back was the hair with the follicle intact that was found on the stump of Miss Donna Bennett Johnson, I believe her name is.
So did they use his DNA profile that he voluntarily gave them?
Well, yes, they did. And then here's the thing. So they took that DNA, where they took that swab, and now it was input into CODIS. And you explained to everybody what CODIS was last time. So
right.
Yeah. And so when they put it into CODIS, now it's ran against the DNA profile that has been fed into the CODIS from these crime scenes. And lo and behold, the data from the database matched the DNA swab from Sean Vincent Gillis' mouth.
So was it one scene that matched, or was it multiple scenes?
It was initially the one scene, and then they went back and they matched the other scenes.
Okay.
A few other scenes as well. Yes, sir.
So now Sean Vincent Gillis is forensically linked. And at this portion of the investigation, April 29th, in the wee morning hours, he was taken into custody. So the hunt's over now.
That's
Sean
right.
Vincent Gillis has been forensically linked. And at this point, the interrogation process starts. So
that's right.
So at this point in time, we're going to end part 2 of the hunt, the interrogation, and ultimately the incarceration of Sean Vincent Gillis. We have him in custody, so tune in next week and we'll talk about the interrogation component and the incarceration component of it. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.